I kind of wanted to ask you too, Mark, like, because I think we say scale all the time in tech land. Scale is like water, right? But what does it actually mean to you? I'd really be curious to know.
I think we should talk about it.
The Margeteers.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Margaret.
Well, we've reached it, the end of our series. B. I'm not just saying that's too cheesy. Sorry. Oh, sometimes I'm even too much. So look, the series we've been talking about marketing teams for like when you have your fractional CMO, what is the CMO really looking at each stage? And we've talked about our proof of concept seed stage. That's really about tools, infrastructure, getting you set up. We've talked about the Series A, which tends to be more about now the quality of the people, about the quality of, you really are starting branding at this stage in these spaces. And now I want to talk about Series B and beyond, perhaps, because I think Series B is, for me personally, my experience is when things drastically change at the company. A Series B raise can be considered 10 million. It can be considered, 80 million. It can be just, it's such a massive band. It typically is at this space definitely something institutional. Maybe you got to this stage by bootstrapping or so forth, but at this stage, something has happened that's good enough that you're really ready to rocket ship. From a fractional CMO point, everyone has been kind of a generalist. They have been problem solvers. And at this stage, what I want to make sure is that as you're getting ready to completely rocket ship, to specialize, I think something that I'm looking forward to is I'm probably leaving soon, quite frankly, right? We're grooming someone maybe internally who's going to be the CMO, or maybe we're bringing someone externally that's been referred to by the PE or the VC that is, proven at this specific stage. Because there are, like, much like opera singers who will their whole life sing one role, there are CMOs that their whole life will do this stage of business growth.
Yeah, for sure.
They know what to do at this stage. Very relatable analogy there, I know. So I think, like, Mark, there's so much to talk about at this time. We would not ever finish anything about it. So I think some of the key things that I'm really curious about your amazing experience is, how do you prepare that team for real, as saying, hockey stick growth, rocket ship growth? And what are the things that are mostly on your mind after the money's hit the bank?
Okay, well, definitely what's on my mind is how to leverage everything that we've learned in the seed and the A round. So in that time, we should have figured out the right message, the right markets. We have a good idea of the KPIs. We have a fully functioning MarTech stack at this point, and now it's a matter of just really grinding through it. And so when I think about this stage, I really think about taking everything that we've learned thus far and now doing it at scale. So doing it at scale usually means your team now becomes larger. You're moving from this kind of smaller team, like we talked about, maybe a generalist and the performance marketer. Now we're moving into specialties where we've got people who are focusing on lead gen. We have people focusing on content generation. We have people focusing on marketing automation. We have people focusing on, customer marketing and making sure that we have retention strategies in place. And now it just becomes a bunch of silos. So I think the most important thing that a CMO brings to the table at this point is making sure that all of that is functioning on all cylinders with the overarching themes of the growth strategies, the go-to-market, making sure that the business KPIs are being achieved, and kind of thinking of it from that perspective. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is typically also where, if it is a PE firm, this is where you're under a magnifying glass. There's going to be people who want to know, how is this performing? How are you going to increase, our ability to build a pipeline? How are you going to scale up what you're doing with the sales team in order to make sure that they have everything that they need to scale, because they're being built at the same time. So marketing team is being built at the same time that, you're going to be enhancing the sales function and the size of the sales team as well. So, there's definitely quite a lot of moving parts there, honestly.
There's a lot going on. I think, and one thing too that has a big impact is that the founders may not be CEOs anymore at this stage.
In fact, there's a good chance they're not, right?
Right. And that's a big mental and cultural shift as well for anyone that's been on the journey to date. Now they need to listen to this person when they've been part of this fantastical journey of the founder. I've seen the more successful navigation of those times is when it's been like a product-led founder who are quite happy to just go stay with product. I think it's a little bit harder with the visionary founder who, some of them can carry on and some of them don't. It's a really nice, I read Kara Swisher's Burn book, which I think is a great book to read, where she talks about her, so it's very autobiographical, but also kind of the evolution of Silicon Valley as her experience as a journalist to see these kind of mega growths in the noughties. And her words, not mine, but this discussion of, Google brought in Eric Schmidt, right, to be the grown up in the room. And he had a CEO experience. He knew what he was doing. And that, and part of his time frame as CEO was also to groom the two of them for, whether it was Larry, who ultimately became CEO, but Larry and Sergey, to groom them to be prepared to be these product-led people and so forth. So a lot has happened. At this stage, the company has probably doubled in people in 2 months, right? And
it's been
maybe more
surge. Yeah.
So there's a little bit of an identity crisis, not in a negative way, but just how, again, is this opportunity to reinforce what the good our product does, the value that it does, the people that we brought in, the MarTech that we brought in to now kind of, as I say, turn on the taps. Is exactly as you said, we already know that these ones do it. This is how we're going to turn on the taps. Something that I've run into a bit on this side is in this global expansion, like typically the Series B, then you'll go into different markets. If we're a UK-based place, maybe we've been toying with places on the continent, but now you're going to go out into the field in a major way. And something that I really, we need to decide is, are we going to do kind of a hub and spoke marketing system where you have a central HQ? They're saying these are the campaigns, we've boxed them off. Now you go and translate it or localize. Translation, localization, always a discussion, but go out and say, should I comment if you don't know? Translation is simply taking the campaign that it was and putting it into French, into Italian. Localization is taking the campaign that came from headquarters and adding in your own local case studies. Let's say if it's in Italy, we're going to have Italian companies telling their case studies. There's going to be a redo of the copy to maybe have some colloquialisms or something a little bit more personal for that particular culture. That takes more time to implement versus just here it is, turn it over, get it out in the translation models. But that time can be hugely beneficial to go further in understanding and brand love in that market if you've taken a moment to appreciate. I think in Europe for sure there's so much of just here's this American thing over here, and I think a lot of people appreciate the tiny bit of why does it matter to us culturally differently. So you kind of decide that. Are you going to have field marketers that have a lot of autonomy in their new markets to say, thank you for that campaign, I'll take it? Or actually, you've been operating in that area, that geographical area for 10 years. People kind of know you. They have some brand love. In our market, nobody's heard you. So actually what I want is the campaign you did 5 years ago. Like, is that on the server of this is what we are? Give me that campaign and let me go from there, because just the maturity of the markets might be a completely different consideration. And again, to something you mentioned as far as being smart about the money in our discussion last time about bootstrapping, you can spend a lot of money in a new market and get very little back. So it's really careful to think about how are we going to smartly come into it. I know a lot of companies here. So what I would really like from a marketing hire at this stage is a head of partner marketing.
Exactly.
Going into new geographies with a either reseller or a different company marketer or an organization. I've done a lot of HR campaigns. There's CIPD here in the UK. There's, what is it in the US? It's also starts with a C, but in any case, like kind of going into who is the organizations where maybe you have your target audience there, and then developing a membership or friendship or partnership with that. So you're bringing in some very different, and I think the things I kind of wanted to ask you too, Mark, like, because I think we say scale all the time in tech land. Scale is like water, right? But what does it actually mean to you? I'd really be curious to know. I think to me, with this, like, a partner marketer, they now are opening up brand new channels of opportunities that hopefully get you there faster. I think it also means, frankly, sometimes it just means there's more money, so your ads can go further and longer and so forth, or you can do these paid partnerships that see more people see it. But I'm curious if you don't mind being so basic for me, like how you explain what does scale mean to you, I guess.
So like so many of our other themes,
It depends.
It depends. So, scale in general, I mean, ultimately what you're trying to achieve is top line and bottom line growth, and you're trying to do it as fast and as efficiently as possible, with as few operational or customer hiccups along the way as you can. Typically, you've set some sort of stretch goal in there, either, in concert with your PE investors, or as part of a board activity, you have a growth that you're, a growth target, I would say, that you're working towards. And really, it's all about, when I say scale, so much of it is operational. So, like I had said at the top of the call, which is taking all those lessons that you learned and now doing it faster and better and more efficiently than you have done. It's interesting because when you're talking about channels, I think that is, one of the fastest ways to scale. And when you're thinking about, field marketing, it can be, geographies, but it also can be vertical markets. So learning really quickly, in what other vertical markets does your solution make an impact, testing those with great go-to-market partners, and then figuring out where those areas of focus are going to be, because you can't be everything to everybody. You're going to have to make decisions somewhere in that scaling process. There's going to be the decisions of which vertical markets are actually showing progress, and where you're going to devote the vast majority of your time and energy. And measurement early on, and not unlike we were talking about with the marketing programs, knowing when to say no, knowing when to stop. Okay, that dog doesn't hunt, and moving on to the next one, and doing that as efficiently and as fast as you can.
Great point. Yeah, the decision making, I could talk a lot. That's been, I think, one of the biggest lessons for me this year is about like faster, how do we kind of also get to a point of making faster decisions? I think what's curious about this stage as well, exactly what you're just talking about, is do you find that marketing is very much involved with the discussion on vertical specialization versus geographic specialization? Do you think that's something led by the CEO? Is it led by sales? I try to kind of mirror, let's say if sales is going to go put X amount of people into a new market, then I say, okay, then we need a marketer in that market as well as clearly meaningful for sales. How do you think that marketing is involved with that kind of setup?
In my experience, it's been done a little bit differently, where
Okay.
there's kind of like a governing board, a strategic organization within the company that kind of says, okay, here's the growth goals. This is what we're aiming for. These are the markets that we're going to, investigate. And typically, having a seat at the table when those decisions are being made, when those conversations are happening. And then it becomes much easier then to work in concert with, in parallel with sales and customer success and all of that, so that all those activities are aligned. I think that that ties back again to, the moving fast but being super efficient. Is when it comes from the top down, it's easier to manage the waterfall than if, marketing is saying, oh, I think we should go into XYZ market because we've done research and we think that we have, a value proposition here. Or sales is like, oh, I have experience in this vertical, and, why don't I leverage some of that and see whether or not we can get some, pilots in that industry. That's very disconnected,
Mm,
very opportunistic. The
mm,
likelihood of those being successful are much less than
okay.
if you're looking at it from a more strategic perspective that's aligned across functions. I'll always default to aligning across functions. Like it's how I'm wired, and I don't know if it came naturally or if it's just by circumstance of having worked with some really great high performance organizations, but that interconnectedness at the top of the org chart, I have found is the best way to get all of that to happen, versus sales saying, oh, I'm going to go into this market. And then like, oh, okay, well now I need a field marketer for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I just think it's so like this really is the make it or break it stage. I
Oh,
think it's
for sure.
just this time of I've had a different conversation the other day and just saying like this burn where you talk about the burn, and I think this is the time too, depending on where the stress of the money comes in, where exit becomes a bigger part of our conversation. So
Yeah.
are we going to continue to do rounds for whatever reasons because our burn is too high? Are we going to start to, what is the actual potential? The actuality is what I was going for, and is it actual? Potential of an IPO, or are we looking to be acquired? And I think this is also a really important part of the marketing strategy at this point, is if you're going to be 90% on the acquisition stage. I do a lot of, I put more than 10% into my marketing strategy on how to look attractive to whom you want to be bought by. And so that becomes another strand of not only hitting all of those marks and hitting all of the growth targets, but is it there is one little strand of content that is just like, what a great team, what are the great products that have prevailed all of these issues, what a great integration it would look like with this kind of ecosystem, but there is a little bit of the, at this stage that we start to really talk about the exit, and it becomes part of our strategy as well.
Yeah, it's interesting too, because if you have an IPO exit versus an acquisition exit, exit. And IPO exit might mean that the current CEO becomes part of that and is part of the public offering and whatnot. Whereas an acquisition might mean that they know that they're going to be there for, you know, 1 to 3 years, maybe
Yeah.
as part of a transition team, and then they're gone. And those take very different messaging, just from a perspective of the branding of the leadership of the company and how you want to position, you know, your thought leaders in addition to, you know, the company and what the company stands for and what the company does. So
Yeah.
I think it's kind of interesting. I think a lot of companies don't think about that. They don't think about the branding of the team or what the team is known for.
Mm.
Certainly the stellar organizations do, right? So OpenAI does that. There's a lot of branding. But you know, I think most companies, it's an afterthought, or it's driven from the founder ego as opposed to a business decision.
That's fair. That's really fair. But I think no, but that's something even in seed round, whenever I hit boots on the ground, I want to know what the exit plan is. And if it's if it's seed round, they're saying we want to go for a multi-generational family business. That's fine. That's great. You know, there's still a lot to be done to get you to that space to build a sustainable business that can go generations. But it's just, you know, that's one thing I'm really passionate about that I think gets swept away too easily at every single stage, because you get caught up with the growth, you get caught up of the survival of the round. Sometimes that's like a Hail Mary moment that the round has come in and you had to, and you know, we live to eat another day. But I kind of try to say, look, and everyone says we're going to exit in 5 years. I don't know why everyone thinks 5 years is the magic word, or they say, come be a co-founder with me. It'll take 3 years. So many people tell me, they told me it would be 3 years.
I hear 7, so
7. Okay, that seems more realistic at least.
so yeah, we're talking to different companies for sure. But
But it's still more realistic, I think, at 7 than the people that are really mad at year 6 to say they said be 3 years and now it's been 6 years and we still haven't exited. Anyway, I digress. But I think that that's something I try to do, bring in every stage, and maybe that would be a good way to spend our last minutes together, is talk about, you know, we talk about the uniqueness of each stage, but what are the things that are important in every single stage? And I think that what's important to me is really that discussion of that exit, because it is too easy at every stage, at every moment. Everything can feel like a crisis. You know, everything, you know, you're about to do a big demo and the tech fails. It just does. It's, how are we going to compensate for that moment, for demo failure? What's the messaging we have for it? But keeping that eye on what is our ultimate goal, because otherwise it's so much energy at every stage, you care so much and so forth. It's not a sustainable life cycle, lifestyle, and so forth. And so I say, how are we going to exit? Who do we want to really be known for? I've only worked with one company that's been incredible at it, absolutely incredible with their every month in the shareholder update says, here's what we're doing, this is now why we're pivoting here. Every quarter shareholder deck says this is who we're still aiming at that we think would acquire at us over years. And you might say, well, why haven't they been acquired? But it's because they're getting to the point where they think they can exit at the point that they want to from an acquisition. And it's just, I just really admire it. And I always say, well, I don't think there's any harm in that space, because we obviously have revenue targets, but I think that exit target is a really important event to plan for as well. That's important in your marketing plan. And as you say, highlighting leaders, highlighting product advancements, highlighting geographic growth, with there's still more growth to be had, but it gets swept under. So that's a lot for me, but I'm curious, what are some things that you think are really important at every stage?
At every stage?
Yeah.
It's, for me, it all ties around performance.
Okay.
So, marketing has to be a performance-oriented organization. Otherwise, it's just a money sink and a time sink.
Mm,
So, are you not building brand? Are you or are you not building awareness and preference for what you bring to the market? Are you able to support the sales function in lead generation? Are you able to partner with the sales organization around content, overcoming objections, and managing the customer life cycle? Once a customer's onboarded and they're here, what are you doing to make sure that there's, cross-selling opportunities, upselling opportunities, and the ability to retain that customer long term? And
mm,
ultimately, like big picture, like you're talking about, if there's, an exit on the horizon, what's being done to position the company for the exit? Once you become public, what are you doing with your SEC filings and the narratives that go along with what goes outward out to the broader financial markets? How are you talking about the company? All of these have an underpinning of marketing, and all of them demand performance. And I think so many times people think of marketing as marketing communications. Oh, the pretty pictures. Oh, the brochures. And I just want to remind everybody that marketing at its core is a performance organization that can be measured, that can be optimized, and that can really make or break whether or not you grow, and make or break whether or not you are primed for acquisition, a merger, an exit of some sort, or, you know, market dominance, whatever it is that end strategy is. I think marketing is right in the epicenter of it.
I love that. This definitely feels like our most dense conversation of this series, just simply again because the complexity has come in with this round. The considerations, the extra people. I still don't think in this stage, like there's no place to hide. Like you still need, as you say, they're performance people. We we still need problem solvers.
Mhm.
We still need people that have some passion for the state of growth and getting to see something, really grow month on month. I think is an exciting place to be.
For sure.
Uh, if I was wrapping this up, quite frankly, I think there's two lessons of this entire series, and I think what you just said now, spoiler, this is going to be on some promos, is exactly it. Marketing is a performance organization, and that is definitely the takeaway. It is, yeah, long gone as is the Mad Men age. I like to say something too at this stage. Maybe you starting to get it at this stage for sure, but definitely not in Seed or A. Is people come to say, "Oh, do you want to put your banners here?" And I don't have brand money. Do you know what brand money looks like? Like brand money is when the target's impressions, like, which is just a wonderful, wonderful space to be if you've made it there and so forth. But the end result was impressions and so forth, or channels of view. But fundamentally, number one, like, yeah, marketing is a performance organization. And number two, a fractional CMO can be the strategic benefit to your next stage of growth by someone who has, I've seen a lot, Mark's seen a lot, and being able to come in and say, gosh, I've been to this part of the rodeo before. This is how we're going to do it. This is how we're actually going to make your marketing budget go further, because you're getting the strategic knowledge of someone who's been through it before, along with maybe a really keen junior person who's just really excited. And then that person is going to be better prepared to stay with the company further because they're getting the guidance, they're getting the best practices. And, I think that we can see this good foundation that's set, that then hopefully when the time's right, you're bringing someone in full time and off they go. They have a nice program that's been set up for success. specifically set up for success, not set up just because that's the preference of the person they're trying to build themselves in as a wall thing to say, no, I'm going nowhere. So those are some of my final thoughts on this particular series. What do you think, Mark?
I think you summed it up perfectly. And just one little footnote on the last comment that you made about, transitioning to a new, probably permanent CMO. I think it's important to acknowledge, for anybody who's on the client side, it's important to acknowledge that a CMO may come in and want to make immediate changes, so that they're putting their own signature on things, and they want that ability to make it their own, and that's totally understandable. What I think makes sense for anybody who's the outgoing CMO is to really create a little dossier about how we got here from there and what those learnings were, and have that be part of the transition to the new CMO, so that things aren't swapped out just for the sake of swapping out. A really good CMO is going to be willing to keep what's working, regardless of the fact that they weren't the one who originated it. And
they still look great.
Yeah. So on the client side, just a cautionary tale, which is, just because you're progressing to that next layer of growth, and you're bringing in a new permanent, full-time, full-scale CMO, it's the worst time to actually just kind of start from scratch.
Yeah.
And think that, oh, we're in this new phase and now we're going to do things differently. Learn how we got where we are, and then make those decisions.
I love it.
There we go.
And I think, and just the last one on that, and because I think what's interesting about this is you probably would stick around to, this isn't necessarily a firing, it's a transition of skill set. So you would be around to be able to say, this is how we got here. These are the things that are working. These are the couple of things to look for. Now, please add your flavor to it, because we've built this foundation. You now can take it to the next stage. And I think that's actually a massive opportunity, is that transition time that most people don't really get.
Yeah, it's important. Part of the reason too why sometimes people don't get that is because the leadership team doesn't understand that the outgoing CMO is very willing to actually have those conversations and be part of that transition. They think that they kind of it's like a water faucet, and they turn one off and turn the next one on, and it's not. That's not what's best for the company. What's best for the company is a transition.
From the fractional CMO to the full time,
not to swap out. And fractionals know that, and they're willing to do that, and they want to do that because they want to see what they've built have a really nice transition into adulthood.
I love it. Well, Mark, as always, very insightful, very helpful. This one is definitely the densest of it, but I really like it. And I thank you for your time and insights as always.
Awesome. Back at you. This is fun.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you. We'll speak soon.
All marketing and marketing for all.